Welcome to Brash Words, where we say it like we mean it. The only podcast where you hear the truth about business. It's for entrepreneurs who are willing to learn and grow by intently listening to raw and entertaining content that explores and pushes through the fears of running a business. Now, if you're ready to hear the fucking truth about business, here's your host, Sly.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Brash Words. C'est un bon matin this morning in Toronto. It's Friday, which is amazing that we survived another week. I'm so excited. I got a little bit of music playing in the background. Jet Set Satellite, for those of you that kind of grew up in the 80s, late 80s band out of Canada somewhere. They're great. I'll eventually kind of turn it off, but I just kind of want to get in the groove this morning. I'm excited. Again, I'm your host, Sly, episode 13. We got an exciting show for you today. It's all going to be about how to deal with difficult people, which I'm sure that at some point in your career as an executive, as a business owner, quite frankly, just as an individual, you've kind of gone through these issues. How we've all come across a situation where it's intense, it's emotional, and quite frankly, how do you manage and go through it? So I'm going to give you some examples, and then at the same time, I'm going to give you the 10 steps that I use to deal with difficult people. And we're going to wrap up the show, as we always do, with another tale from the road. This story is just going to be one of those strange ones that again happened at the LA Marriott, because apparently that's where everything that happens that's strange to me is that's the epicenter for everything. Anyways, let's just jump right into it. This show, I'm not going to start it off with a book. I'm in the middle of reading. I'm actually not even reading a business book right now, because I am doing couple of things that I've been doing on the academic side. I've taken 2 courses at Northwestern. One was an advanced sales course, which is I wouldn't say it's strange for me, but I kind of want to scientifically formalize some of the art that I've learned over the years, and that was kind of cool. The second course that I took at Northwestern was under Peter O'Toole, who's the former CMO from United Airlines. Great teacher, by the way. He is the dean of one of the schools at Northwestern, and I can't even remember. But it's a course on loyalty marketing. How do you build a loyalty marketing program? How do you measure it? And it gets barely scientific, which is great. It's going to end up as a 6-piece blog post on Mercatus.com. You'll probably see parts of it trickle in potentially on SylvainPerrier.com. I kind of haven't decided yet. I mean, it's going to be up to the Mercatus marketing team regardless. Anyways, so I'm taking now, it's the Canadian Sales Professional Association. It's around strategic account management. And I want to again formalize some of that. So I had to pause reading business books. But on the personal side, I am reading a book it's called The Company. It won a Canadian award. It's written by a Canadian author. It's a really good book around the history of the Hudson Bay. And it really starts back into as far back as early colonialism here in Canada. London businessmen wanted to exploit the fur trade here in Canada with the indigenous population and so on. And really, it gets really deep into it. So it's one of those books you can read 10, 15, 20 pages in about 45 minutes. You're immersed in the culture, but you start to get an appreciation around the impact and effects of colonialism on the indigenous population in Canada, the fur trade, exploration into western parts of Canada, western parts of the United States, the battle between the French and the English, as well as the introduction of certain goods in the lives of indigenous people. Guns, gunpowder, kettle pots, kind of those things, knives, and so on. So it kind of really becomes interesting in the effects on tribal warfare. Anyways, so I'm going to pause right there. We can talk about that in another show. So let's get right into it. My example in my first time dealing with a really hardcore, difficult person in the context of business. Prior to that, I had dealt with difficult people when I was much younger and not necessarily in the business community. And my journey in the business world did not start till I was doing my second degree, computer science, in college, and I would have been in my early 20s, and I was working for I was the IT guy for a large moving company that was affiliated with North American Van Lines. And I was kind of, it's through a friend, and they said, hey, they have a network and they need some help. But it was very collegial, the environment, and there was really limited politics. So, I was never really exposed. So it was kind of my next job after I graduated. Small office. I was at the time a software developer, but I was kind of helping out on the network management to eventually become director of MIS, eventually director of engineering. But anyways, I was kind of helping out. And so we, because we were a research corporation, we printed a heck of a lot of reports for Fortune 500 companies. We actually had almost like a printing house inside the business. And these reports would get printed, batch printed. We had people managing, I wouldn't say people managing the printers, but production team. And these printers were costing us a lot of money. It was insane in terms of power, in terms of consumables. In any case, we also use them in certain times for printing office documents. So we had a room with all these printers, and then we had other printers dispersed across the office. But we had this one person, and super smart individual, very capable at her job, and she was trying to, I guess, photocopy something and then eventually print and then photocopy. So she goes to one printer, it jams up for whatever reason, and then she doesn't clear the jam. She takes her stuff, she goes to the next machine, and she's going to a production machine at this point. She tries to photocopy, the photocopier jams, she grabs her stuff, she goes to the next and the next. She ended up coming up and jamming up three or four or five machines. And so I'm called and dispatched by our CEO, who's clearly frustrated because he's hearing it from the production team. I got to go fix all these things. And I start to kind of go through it, and I realize, oh, there's a staple in here. There's a paper clip in this one. Well, like, what's going on? So I fix it up. I don't know it's her at this point. I go to my office, and I'm sitting in my office having a coffee, and I distinctively remember this atrocious knock on the door, which the door was open, and it was like an angry knock, foot stomping, looking at me, throwing her stack of papers on the floor, and she gets right in my face, and she puts her finger right in my face, and she goes, I want to fucking know why your fucking printers are never fucking working. First of all, I'd never heard the word fuck used so many times in one sentence, kind of like what I'm doing right now. And she goes, you're a fat fucking lazy prick. And I'm like, I obviously, first of all, she's considerably more senior than me. And I'm at this point, I'm just like, I'm not even 30 years old. No one's ever talked to me like that. So I am just shocked. So I didn't say anything, and I it took a while for me to say anything, and that now her blood is boiling, and she's getting antsy and she's getting angry, and she just grabs her stuff, and then she leaves and she storms off out of the doorway of my office. So I kind of sit there, I collect myself, and I obviously not even 30 minutes later, I reported directly to a VP of technology. He comes over, he sits down and closes the door. And the first thing he said, what happened? And I'm like, so you already know? He goes, yeah, she came into my office and she blamed you for all the printers that aren't working, yada, yada, yada. So I kind of, I had to kind of fess up and share with him what happened and her coming into my office and just kind of blowing up. He goes, don't worry about it. She's maybe she's having a bad day. Let's see what happens tomorrow. And then depending on what happens, we'll take care of it from there. And quite frankly, it didn't get better. He didn't intervene. And I didn't know how to handle the situation. And it became a challenge because the relationship was extremely strained. Strained in the sense on the back talking, strained in the sense of we'd be in executive meetings and she would clearly point me out as, well, he'll never get it done. He'll never be able to do this. We'd be at company functions and she would make remarks and she would have just the evil look on her face across the room to me and so on. And eventually, she was morose enough in general, not just with me, when come to find out with other individuals, that she ended up making her way out of the business. And she married, and you guys can Google this. She married a professional hockey coach that actually coached for two NHL teams, one of them being Boston. I'll leave it at that. In any case, good luck to her. And quite frankly, it just taught me a valuable lesson in terms how do you deal with people that overreact, people that confront you, and people that quite frankly are very difficult to deal with. Now, over the course of my career, yes, I've had challenges in dealing with difficult people, whether they be employees, whether they be vendors, whether they be clients. And I have found more often than not reacting, being brutally honest, calling out the emotional reaction and not having one, and pausing and letting the person absorb and then decide. And quite frankly, that's fundamentally, that moment of silence is so critical, and it can be very uncomfortable for most because I think we're just, our minds are racing and we're just taught to fill the void. Let it sit. And when you let it sit, the next reaction will tell you in terms of what you need to do, in fact, with your next steps. So let me kind of teach you in terms of what are my steps that I use. In a moment where this occurs, whether it be in the context of a telephone call, Zoom call, face-to-face, drive-through windows, because we seem to go through those these days if we want our Starbucks or Tim Hortons, for our friends on the East Coast in America, your Dunkin' Donuts, and for those of you on the West Coast, your In-N-Out burgers, which are so delicious in any case. First step is always be calm, don't react, and quite frankly, this is very key. Be aware of your emotions. Me, quite clearly, I can go from 0 to super bitch in 0.6 seconds. I am, if there was a land speed record from 0 to super bitch, that would be me in 0.6 seconds. And even fucking Elon Musk in a Tesla and 2 Teslas, he would not be able to catch up with me. So I got to be aware. I personally have to be aware of my emotions, but generally you got to be calm. That's really, really important. The second one in that moment of silence, as they're reacting and you're checking your emotions, try to understand where they're coming from. Are they being legitimate? And it's okay to ask a question. Tell me more is a great way to kind of diffuse a question. Or you could say, if they're standing, please, I'd like to learn more what you're saying. I'm kind of curious. Have a seat. That really starts to diffuse the situation in terms of where they're coming from. And it gives you that mental pause, because what you will find in a situation like this, and I've seen this more often than not, you'll get this really weird tunnel vision. It's not that like you're going blind, but you will hone in, and your mind and your senses will fixate on kind of what's transpiring at this point. So again, I recommend just diffuse it by remaining calm, keep your emotions in check, and then get an understanding where this is coming from. Because you may realize, in fact, there is a real situation here, or they're overreacting. And you kind of need to assess which one's coming to the forefront here before you kind of get to this next step. Let it happen. And then what I normally do as my third step is I acknowledge what they've said or what's happening. And then I will say, appreciate you letting me know. Thank you. I understand how you feel. Let me get back to you. So you're not avoiding it, but what you're creating at this point is distance. And I always go back to this principle, and I think I've talked about this in a previous podcast. When I'm making a very difficult decision, I always look at the risk ratio. So the risk ratio being, is the decision so critical I need to make it now, or I need to react right now, or can it wait 24 hours? So brief example on that would be, hey, we have a superstar employee. He's being poached. He's got a contract in hand, hasn't signed it, feeling remorseful that he, talked to the recruiter, doesn't want to leave the business. What can we do? Well, if he's a superstar employee, we got to do something right now, because we really want to make sure that they remain here. They're critical to the business. You make a decision. Another one is, we have the IRS on the phone and you filed your taxes and there was a mistake. Or the IRS sent you a letter and it's the same principle again. You made a mistake. So your risk ratio is, well, I think the IRS can, it's Friday afternoon, they can wait till Monday. Or another example is, well, the fucking house is on fire and you got to get the kids and the wife out. So, okay, well, guess what? My risk ratio is pretty shitty. I got to react right away. But you create that distance in terms of, it gives you a time to reflect. What I do in this period of reflection, you write down what they said. Do you understand what they said? And fucking go fact check it. Go get an opinion. Go ask people around. Is this person what this person is saying, is it legitimate? Are they overreacting? Where is this coming from? Does it make sense? So that's the third step. Also, in the context of your conversation with this individual, you got to let them know where you're coming from. So what I didn't do with that first person in the example I gave you at the top of the show, when she was stormed into my office and kind of threw her stuff down. And, she's saying, I'm a fat fuck and I'm lazy and the printers never work. I never kind of paused and said, I understand what you're saying and you're frustrated, but those printers were operational as of this morning on my first round of checks. And there happened to be a series of reports printed for our two largest Canadian banks and one of the US's large banks. Those reports are in the shipping bay right now, getting packaged, ready to be shipped out to them. I never kind of intellectually, politely stood my ground and told the individual, well, here's where I'm coming from. So she I kind of let her emotionally dump on me without kind of standing up and saying, well, here's where I'm coming from. Now, over time, again, this is the next step, and I'll relate it back to the example. I never tried to build a bridge or a rapport with this individual. And you can try to do that when you're dealing with a difficult person, especially if it's someone that you work with or someone that's under your employ. This may be just a personality trait that they have in terms of being, I wouldn't say overly aggressive, and maybe in some cases people are overly aggressive, but maybe they're not. It's just the way they are. That's the way they're programmed. They really want to do good, and there's history behind that. So and when you build a rapport, you start to kind of peel the onion back, and then you realize, oh, we're kind of like the two same individuals. We just approach things a lot differently, right? I did a Myers-Briggs, so I'm an ENTJ, and I'm an extrovert. But the reality is like, if you look at the report, like, I'm a mild extrovert. I really, really got to work it. But when I go home, I'm quite the opposite. I'm just more behind the scenes type of thing. And sometimes that's how I approach my leadership. I'm kind of quiet. I listen, but then I'll be like, whoa, this guy's too much for me. And then you have people that are super extroverted and they could have a chip on their shoulder and there's an issue. But when you build that rapport, you start to understand the individual. I actually did not do that with this person. I was jaded. I was frustrated. And wow, fuck, she called me a fat fuck. And like, God, who wants to be called that on a good day? Like, if you're going to listen, to be honest, if you see me at a trade show and you want to call me a fat fuck, you better throw me a goddamn donut. I at least deserve a donut if you call me a fat fuck. Damn it. Anyway, so build that rapport. So number 6, treat the person with respect. Now, take the high road. Never go with the low blow. Okay, let's be honest. That really gets you nowhere. And it'll just get you in trouble. And, and then the worst, you get caught for harassment, cursing at someone today in a professional environment, in any case, can lead you to some dark water, some really turbulent, dark water where you can't swim out. So avoid that. I certainly avoided it with this individual. I did not want to get caught up. Luckily, I had a good VP who was there. And, he provided some good advice, although he didn't do anything. He provided some good advice. He kind of said, you never have to work with difficult people. And that's true. You just don't have to work with difficult people. I unfortunately, this next step is focus on what you can action up. Can you take this to someone more senior than you to help manage this difficult person or the conflict that may be apparent? And I did, over time I had tried that and it just didn't work out. I have a more recent example where I've seen, not in Mercatus, not at Brash Words, but in some of my friends who are actually executives in businesses, where they will have vice presidents battling it out, undermining each other, correlated departments that really fundamentally have to work together, and kind of the animosity bleeds down into the team. So then you have the subordinates that are fighting amongst each other and undermining each other, and it becomes quite toxic. And if this is never actioned up, that is kept kind of like behind the scenes, and the senior and the C-suite doesn't know about this, I can tell you it's a clusterfuck at that point, where you as a C-suite executive have to jump in and likely start with the scalpel, cutting out the cancer of the business. Politics leads to nothing positive, quite frankly, in an organization. And that was my failure in not really being clear with my person I reported to when I worked in Ottawa, to my vice president, to kind of say, hey, by the way, this is a problem for me. I really need you to do this, because it was leading to her, not just the undermining at the executive meetings, but in the social functions, but in terms of, I was really concerned about my business reputation, my ability to execute. And it was kind of taking a blow to my confidence, being called a fat fuck, which I'm not anymore, by the way, let's be clear. And, but I still want that donut. And the other one was quite frankly, I was concerned of people losing confidence in my ability to execute on a technical level. And fuck, like, you're starting off your career. That's the last thing that you need, is somebody doing that to you. So again, focus on what you can do to action up. And this next step is easy. It's fucking ignore, avoid, do what you can, my Lord. And it's easy to do, but it's not easy to do in the sense that, well, maybe this is a person that sits next to you and you got to see them on a daily basis. Maybe this is an individual that, heaven forbid, if it's your boss. I mean, that's a whole other story. This ignore one reminds me of a very, very, very interesting example. Years ago, I went to the Center for Creative Leadership in North Carolina, It's kind of one of those bastions in North America where it's a compound that was actually founded by the brothers, I believe, that owned and had founded Oil of Olay. You know, that cream you put on your face and suddenly you look like Raquel Welch. And they had sold it to one of the large CPGs, consumer brand companies, in case you don't know what that word means. And they had kind of founded this Center for Creative Leadership, which is kind of the who's who in leadership research, publications, writing books, and training. And so I went on site for like a full week. You stay at a beautiful hotel off-site. You're shuttled in the morning. You're put into teams. They videotape you. You go through psychological assessments, team exercises, yada, yada. And you're supposed to come out a better person. I'm still waiting. In any case, there was this person. She worked for a very, very large pharmacy corp out of Chicago. And she would have been a little bit younger than me, probably. Actually, I looked older, but I would say she was about my age. Very smart, very well educated. But fuck, she was always angry and she was just terse and mean. And I always, for some reason, the instructors kept putting her or me in her team. And I kind of got that first whiff of it in the first exercise where she came for the jugular. And I'm like, whoa, this is uncomfortable. This doesn't make sense. Very aggressive, very difficult to deal with. And it kind of got worse over the course of a few days. Except for the fourth day, I cracked that night. We were having martinis at the bar. And I sat down and I actually confronted her, which is the last step of my steps here. But I ignored her as best as I can, right? And I kind of said, I actually escalated it, which is step number 9 after ignore. And I escalated it, and then I confronted her. And I confronted her with her simply to say, and this is a bit an exercise you can try. I'll give her a name. Let's call her Jolene, because I was thinking of the Dolly Parton song. And I actually need some background music for this, if you guys don't mind.
Look at the lights.
A little bit dramatic music, sorry. So Jolene, I said, can I ask you a question? And she's having a martini. She's on her first one, so she's certainly not inebriated. And I said, I want to ask you a very simple question, if you don't mind. And she goes, sure, go ahead, Sly. And I said, I want to understand, throughout the week, you were very, very difficult to work with. And so everyone around on the couches and around the table kind of froze, because they all kind of got bit by her at one point. And I want to say, here's an example. And so I just shot out 2 examples, and then I paused. So, and then I said, it makes me feel like I can't work with you and that I'm not a good person. So I escalated it, step number 9. I confronted her and I gave her some real examples. I wasn't emotional. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't, moving my hands around like I normally do. Thank you to my French heritage. I just really put it in front of her and said, here's what you did, and here's how it makes me feel. And then, the dramatic pause at the end. And then she, you could tell a sense of relief and pressure came off of her shoulders, because she didn't slouch, but her shoulders just dramatically came down. And then she profusely apologized, and she said, my true nature is I'm a very competitive person, and I work in an environment where I'm surrounded by men who only pay attention to me because of my ass. And quite frankly, I can't get promoted. I can't get ahead. I'm more educated than the people that I report to. I have more experience than the people that I report to. And I was sent to this program by my boss as a view to open me up so I'm not as hard at the office, yada, yada, yada. And she went on. And then she, she drank and the tears came out. It was great. And, we kind of quasi became really good friends that night and kind of stayed in touch for quite a few years. I haven't talked to Jolene in so long, but that's my fault. But that's kind of that's really essentially kind of following the steps and diffusing a very difficult person. So you see the contrast between, kind of following these steps now, when, you know them and you're a little bit older versus what I had to go through in my God, it was in the late 90s. And not kind of being ready for this. So I'm going to go through the 10 steps and really, really quick for you. So be calm, right? Don't react. Be aware of your emotions. 2, try to understand where they're coming from. 3, if you have to, get information from other people. Take that pause. Say that you'll get back to them. Get that information from other people. Let the person know where you're coming from in that conversation, which, again, my example is I didn't do the first time, but certainly with Jolene, I did. Build a rapport. Sometimes that helps. You uncover things. I did build a rapport with Jolene. Always treat the person with respect. Don't get yourself into trouble. It's not worth it. Focus on what you can escalate up. Number 8, ignore. Number 9, escalate. Number 10, don't always recommend it. If there's an opportunity, if you become a naysayer at this, some people do it really well, some people don't. It's one of those fail safes if you have to. But if you do it poorly, I will tell you it will lead to greater issues. So I used it in that context with Jolene. Made sense for me. I felt comfortable doing it. I knew how to execute on it. Not everyone does. It's called confront. So that's how it works. Okay, so let's take a pause, and we're gonna do a Tales from the Road, and this one I think I have a title for it. It's called That's Confidential. Okay, so let's just jump right into it, and we're gonna fuck the pause. So this Tales from the Road it's wintertime. We're one of my employees and I are actually in Los Angeles doing some work. Actually, we're going up and down the coast, working with a bunch of different organizations. And it happens to be, I can't remember what day of the week it was, but it wasn't that late. So we're in the LAX Marriott. We go into the bar. Kate is there. She's servicing us. There's a bunch of patrons around, and we're kind of at a section of the bar we normally don't sit. So I'm in the middle. I have a coworker on my left, and I have this African American gentleman, a black gentleman, sitting next to me on the right. And he's decked out in a military bomber's jacket, and he's got one of those caps. You typically see older gentlemen wear these, and they have the wings kind of on the lid. And you always wonder, is that a Navy cap? What is it? And in fact, we're just shooting the shit. We're about to go to New York in a week. We're going to attend a trade show. I've never been to a train show, but I've been to a trade show. So we're going to a trade show, and this trade show is one of the it's one of the bigger shows in the retail industry. And so we're talking about, hey, we got to check out this restaurant. We got to go here. We got to go here. Yada yada. The gentleman next to me leans in and says, "Oh, you guys are going to New York?" And we're like, "Yeah, we're going to New York. That's really cool." He goes, "Yeah, I'm originally from New York." And I said, "Oh yeah, what part of New York?" "Well, we kind of grew up in Chelsea, which is Hell's Kitchen, and yada yada yada. But now I'm in the Navy. I'm actually flying out to Hawaii. I'm retiring. I'm a Navy pilot, and so on and so on. And it's great. And I'm going to see some of my old friends." I said, "Oh yeah, this is so great. Do you still live in New York?" He goes, "No." He goes, I actually live north of here, I'm not only retiring as a pilot, but I'm also retiring as a fighter jet instructor." And I got to tell you, that there's so many pretend pilots in airport hotels. It's fucking not funny. So we're kind of like very skeptical because the week before we had another incident with a pretend pilot. So we're kind of not sure. And then so Kate kind of leans in and she goes, yeah, he's really a pilot. It's like he's never been hit before, so don't worry about it. So I go, oh, okay, great. Like, and so how long have you been not out in New York? So he kind of tells us the story. His father used to gamble a lot, go to the racetrack, and cash he would keep, and he would buy houses, brownstones, and just line them up and buy them and buy them and buy them. So this gentleman here, kind of his retirement, was going to manage a little bit of the family's real estate portfolio. So he's, you can tell he's well off. And his wife kind of came down through the conversation. So I got to assume he's not a pretend pilot. So I said to him, I said, have you ever seen any combat time? Fuck, what a question to ask. And he kind of says, absolutely. I flew in Desert Storm. And he kind of walked through the one thing the U.S. government never really wanted to do during Desert Storm was shoot out any military convoys that had to do with weapons and so on, caches and terrorist groups and so on. And so he kind of elaborated on that. And then he goes, eventually it kind of dovetailed into Afghanistan and the conflict in Afghanistan just before he started teaching. And he goes, the U.S. government did not want to disrupt the drug trade in Afghanistan, simply because they knew that without that, they would have to come in with financial relief because the quite frankly, it is the preferred crop being grown by the people in Afghanistan because it yields the most in terms of value. Fuck. Yeah, duh. No shit. Drugs. So he said, oh, you guys are from Canada, yada, yada. Thank you to your country for all the planes that landed on the East Coast during 9/11. I said, oh, so like, did you have any experience with 9/11? And then this is where the story comes out. And he goes, and he says, absolutely. So we were dispatched immediately when the first plane actually hit the tower. We were immediately put into our planes and sent up, and we were quickly informed that the second plane was too close to the next tower for us to kind of intercept it over the city. It didn't make sense. There was the other plane that kind of crashed in a field in Pennsylvania, but at some point we were made aware of the plane that was making its way to the Pentagon. And he goes, our fucking president would never, ever give us the order to shoot down that plane. He preferred to have it hit the Pentagon. And then he gets up, slaps money down on the table to pay not only for his drinks, but for all the drinks that we had. And he looks at us and he goes, and that's fucking confidential. And then he leaves. And I'm like, holy shit, that was like just an amazing story. And with that, folks, it was great chatting with you today and how to deal with difficult people and sharing you another tale from the road. I'm your host, Sly. Check it out, SylvainPerrier.com, on Instagram at Brash Words, on Twitter at Brash Words. And next episode 14, not sure what it's going to be. I think it's going to be about having difficult conversations. I think that's like a natural progression. Thank you so much for listening. Peace out.
Thanks for listening to Brash Words. If you liked hearing the truth about business, then follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Brash Words. And for more great content, visit our website, brashwords.com. Join us next time for more real, raw, honest truth about running your business.